What's up, kinfolk? Welcome to the #1 ranked show. I am your host, RJ Young. Thank you for watching on the Fox Sports app, YouTube, or listening wherever you get your podcast. Today, we are going to talk about college football! All right, so full stop for me here. I have been aching to talk some ball that is college with you. But we have this little thing called the NFL draft where, we do cover the NFL draft because we're watching our sainted, lovely ducklings become NFL football players, and we're all here for that. And while I was extremely excited for April and everything that we've accomplished in the month of April, I want to say that as a group, right, myself, Producer Cat, Tyler Wojak, John Marcus, we were super productive in April, maybe our most productive month ever, quite honestly. But now I get to talk about college football. And I get to talk about my post-spring football takes because I came to Producer Cat and I'm like, yo, can I talk? Yes, you can talk. Give us everything you have. So I've had a notebook that is quite literally 2 months deep of stuff that has piqued my interest. Some of it is coming fast because the news has changed. But we're going to hit what I think are the most important takeaways from spring football 2022 as we go into the calm 3 months before the storm. When Big 12 Media Days comes, Pac-12 Media Days comes, Big 10 Media Days come, and then we get to be playing football again. Also, did I mention that I'm excited to be talking about college football? Anyway. All right. So the first take that I have for you, and yeah, we're going to come with something real spicy off the top. Texas is back, guys. I know. I said it. I know. You hear it literally every single year. I know. But I'm telling you guys, this is the year. All right, so let's I'm told to start with positives, but I really want to build to the positives with Texas, okay? So let's do this. Let's start with the absolute negative here. Worse is going to get. When the 2022 NFL draft ended, Texas hadn't had a single player selected. You might wonder, when's the last time that happened? Turns out it was quite literally 8 years ago. So they've had this happen twice in the last 10 years, right? Or 8 years if you want to be a stickler about it. When they hadn't had it happen before 2014 since 1938, okay? Down. Texas is down, right? 5-7 last year. Lost to Kansas in what was a dramatic and very cool game to watch. I remember that. It was extremely exciting. But that's as bad as it's going to get for Texas. It's Steve Sarkisian's year one. I expect him to figure it out, even as, jury's still out on what he is as a head coach. We know what he is as an offensive coordinator, especially at Alabama. But the things to remember here is that Bijan Robinson is still 7.5 yards deep, no matter who the quarterback is. All right? I actually put this to Steve Sarkisian last July. I was telling him, look, I know you like to distribute the football. I know you've had quarterbacks that can play for you. I know you've had wide receivers that can play for you. But what is going to stop you from saying, we're going to hand the football to the Brahma Bull in the back and dare you to stop him? And when they did that, Texas looked good, okay? They looked really good. And Bijan Robinson is one of the best tailbacks in college football, if not the best returning tailback in college football. Remarkable dude. Really cool human being, right? On top of being an outstanding football player. But they also got so much better offensively. So you add Quinn Ewers from Ohio State. Cool. He'll duke it out with Hudson Card. But, I'm going to be out here saying, like I did with Casey Thompson last year, he's going to be the starter when push comes to shove. Okay? He's one of 6 #1 overall recruits who had a perfect 247 rating, along with Vince Young, dudes like that, Jadeveon Clowney. That's the kind of talent that Quinn Ewers is working with. You also added to the weapons he has at his disposal. Isaiah Nair coming from Wyoming, he's a dude. Ajay Hall coming from Alabama, he's a dude. We can keep going here. Xavier Worthy's back, he's a dude. And then you got better with Brendan Marion, who, along with going to college with me at the University of Tulsa, has become one of the best wide receiver coaches in the country. Just take a look at what Jordan Addison did when he was wide receiver coach at Pittsburgh. A little bit more about that a little bit later on. But you got dudes at Texas. Defensively, I think Pete Kwiatkowski is going to figure it out. I think that what he did at Washington was not a fluke. I don't think that he and or Jimmy Lake need to be together to make that happen. By the way, shout out to Jimmy Lake, who got fired on his day off, but still managed to put a Washington defensive back into the first round of the NFL draft. Hello. I love me some Jimmy Lake. I want to see him back in college football at a coordinator role, at a head coaching role. I think he's a really cool dude. But I also think that Pete Kwiatkowski is going to have an opportunity to really come out firing here. Now, the problem with Texas being back is that the only people that want to see Texas being back are Texas fans. And Texas does not make it easy for the rest of us to root for them and to root for their success, right? For reasons that have quite literally nothing else to do with football. You just kind of put it in our face and we can't get away from it. And that's a problem that you can fix. And I'll get to that a little bit later on when I talk about Notre Dame. But bear in mind, I'm already out in front. May 2nd, we're saying it. Texas is back. Fine. Meme me, malign me, yell at me. Just leave it in the comments or the Twitters or whatever. As long as it's not personal attacks, it's all fair game. Talk your trash. I'm up on Texas. All right. For that matter, I'm up on another Big 12 team, and we'll talk about them in a minute. But we got to talk about next, my second takeaway, which has to do with USC, Lincoln Riley, and Director John, I'm going to do the thing. NIL. Let's go! Woo! Let's go! Like Mark Driscoll at North Florida. I'm here for this. All right, so let me back up here. One of the reasons that I love writing about, talking about sports is what happens outside of the game itself. The gamesmanship is amazing, right? The salt is all over. Like all these flavors. We pick salt. We pick salty. Okay, so Lincoln Riley has been murdering the transfer portal. Okay? Doesn't matter that he gets Jackson Dart going to Ole Miss. He gets Caleb Williams coming out of it. Okay? He's adding more to this. We know Raleek Brown's a dude. We know Damani Jackson's a dude, right? We know Gary Bryant's a dude. And they got better. They added Mario Williams from Oklahoma. Okay? We know that Travis Dye can run the football. We know that Dennis Simmons, outside wide receiver coach, can develop those dudes. It's a question about, like, what the defense is going to be because they weren't very good last year. USC wasn't very good last year. We also wonder, is Corey Foreman going to come on? That's a former number 1 overall recruit. You need him to play well, especially with Drake Jackson being gone. And then, the day that we are recording this, which is Tuesday, you're watching this or listening to this on a Thursday, Jordan Addison went into the transfer portal officially after turning some heads over the weekend when it was reported that he was going to do just that because USC might have come up with some NIL cash that would change the nature of his, let's say, commitment to Pittsburgh. Now, I think there's a little bit more to this, but before I do that, let me underscore what kind of a player Jordan Addison is. This is an All-American and the reigning Biletnikoff Award winner. Caught 100 passes last year for 1,593 yards on 143 targets, and his quarterback is the only quarterback who was selected in the first round of the NFL draft. This is also why I was a little bit out on the Kenny Pickens conversation, even as he was making himself into a Heisman finalist, because I think it was Jordan Addison that made him into a Heisman finalist. And I haven't seen someone have that sort of impact on another quarterback, like a wide receiver have that impact on another quarterback, since Randy Moss did it for Chad Pennington. Like, Chad Pennington owes his entire career to what Randy was doing at Marshall. Okay? That is the kind of player that Jordan Addison has turned out to be. Now, along with Kenny Pickett getting selected in the NFL draft as an old man, yeah, I said it, you also have Brendan Marion, who has taken the job at Texas, as I mentioned. And you have Mark Whipple, who is the offensive coordinator at Pittsburgh, who's now the offensive coordinator at Nebraska. Please be good. We'll get back to that here in a little bit. But none of the dudes that he'd been with or who made him what he is, or the guys for which he might say helped facilitate his success, are there now. Okay? It's just Pat Narduzzi. Now, this gets a little bit tight right around here because as reports are coming out on Tuesday that Jordan Addison entered the transfer portal, people were going out of their way to soft play, and he might end up at Pitt or anywhere else. It's about who's going to give him the best opportunity to get drafted. And I'm going, yeah, man, that dude could not play football this year and get drafted in the first round. All right? Like, it's understood. All he could do right now is bring himself down in draft stock. Now, other part about this that I find funny is that it was reported by ESPN that our man Pat Narduzzi called up our man Lincoln Riley to have some words about perhaps tampering with one Jordan Addison. Now, I don't really want to get into that part of it, but I do want to mention that Pat Narduzzi knows what he has in Jordan Addison, and he's willing to go fight for it, and I really enjoy that because as Mac Brown once told me on the Number One Ranked show, kiss your boys at night because in the morning they might be in the portal. Okay? All right? So, we are in a new age, college football. Okay? The old ways are gone. I want to underscore this by saying NIL, yes, has changed the way that we do business. The transfer portal has changed the way that we do business. But that doesn't make it any different than any other job in the United States. It's why I really can't get live to go fight with anybody anymore about name, image, and likeness and kids making money or choosing to transfer. Like there was a study that was commissioned by the NCAA where they put out the number saying 54% of players who enter the transfer portal don't come out. Fine. You ain't nobody's daddy. They made that decision on their own. They will suffer the consequences or learn from those consequences as they do just like any other human being. For me, it's a lot like, hey, I'm going to quit my job. Cool. Good luck to you. And then you don't find a job immediately. It happens. That's called being an adult. I don't understand why everybody became somebody's daddy right now, especially with the NIL bit where, quite honestly, I'm just saying out loud, pay those children. Pay them as they... Now I'm getting loud again because I said I wasn't going to get worked up. I'm getting worked up. But I have a hard time with limiting the earning potential of a 20 or 21-year-old, 19-year-old, 18-year-old, whatever, when somebody wants to go pay them. I play this board game called Envelopes of Cash. Got a Kickstarter. It's all kinds of fun, but it's about name, image, and likeness and boosters and building a roster out of recruits, some of which you pay above, some of which you pay below. It's a lot of fun, right? I say that to say it's always been in the sport, whether we want to admit it or not, whether it's couth to say it or not, it's been there. And if USC, with its enormous alumni riches, I mean, I think Elon Musk's kid goes to USC or something. Like, it's something stupid where, like, some of the richest people in the world send their kids to USC. Let them do that. And while they're doing that, tell them boys to put on their USC jerseys and go door to door around South Central. Because apparently South Central really loves that place. And they want to act like it doesn't exist. All right? So go out there, get Snoop, get J-Rock, get Block Boys, put on your USC, put on your Garnet and Gold, and go be about it, right? Because I think that Lincoln Riley wants to be about it. He's talked about this at length. He wants the challenge of coaching at USC. It'd have been easy for him to stay at Oklahoma. We'll talk about that. But if Jordan Addison ends up at USC, are the rich getting richer? Somehow, some way, sure. But they won one Pac-12 championship basically in the last 10 years, give or take. They fired the dude that won that Pac-12 championship. Some would say it came too late. It's just not an easy place to win. And if you do win, you are expected to win, which is the worst kind of winning as far as I'm concerned. Like, I really don't want to be expected to win. I really like chasing people. Like, I really like hunting. I don't like being hunted. And USC is forever going to be hunted because they do it to themselves. But they're doing it even more to themselves because, cool, if the best wide receiver in football wants to come play for you, bring him in. But while you're at it, can you go get some offensive linemen? I'm asking. Can you go get some? Let me backtrack because some of y'all don't know the facts. The facts of USC's life is this: 13 scholarship offensive linemen. 13. 8 were available for spring football. I don't care if it is Superman back there, which is Caleb Williams' nickname. You need offensive linemen to give him time to throw the football. And more to the point, you can tie a lot of Lincoln Riley's success, especially early success, at Oklahoma to Bill Bedenbaugh, the offensive line coach, who's still at Oklahoma. And what he was able to get out of those players. Like before Lincoln Riley and Bill Bedenbaugh became a tandem, Oklahoma's offensive line had a reputation for being kind of soft, right? For doing the air raid thing that my man Jeff Schwartz does not enjoy. Bill Bedenbaugh said they're going to eat more, and they're going to run downhill, and they're going to get more reps. And immediately, Oklahoma became the kind of program that not only tosses 300-yard passing games, but rushes for 300 yards in a game and is putting up gaudy numbers of 500 and 600 yards of offense because you can get it any kind of way you want it. If you want to limit them running the football, they'll toss it. If you want to limit them throwing the football, they'll run it. You don't have that right now at USC because you don't have the bodies to have it right now at USC. Now, I'm going to hedge and say Lincoln Riley's going to figure it out, and maybe he has the worst coaching season of his life in year one as a head coach at USC. Would not be anything out of the ordinary and would be kind of expected. People are willing to give that a pass. But it's not as if everybody that plays them is not going to want a piece of them because of this offseason. Because every year we have something that's talking about USC and what they're doing. A couple years back, it was Brew McCoy, Texas to USC. You know, Drake London, who's first-round draft pick, compared to Mike Evans on this show by Clay Helton. Dude got fired. I'm saying that the juice doesn't always feel like it's worth the squeeze at SC. And I'm going to push that a little bit farther on as I get into my next tape here. But I need to just say they can be fun. They should be fun. But more to the point, you're going to watch them because you feel some kind of way about Lincoln Riley and USC. You don't feel down the middle. You're not a neutral here. You either are for it or you're against it. And that makes good television, which gets back to my point of, hey, some of the stuff that goes on outside of football, really entertaining stuff. All right. My next take has to do with another blue blood program. That would be Notre Dame. And you know what? I don't have anything to say badly about a Notre Dame because Marcus Freeman is out here rolling differently. This is what I wanted. Now, you'll know, even before I was privileged enough to work at Fox Sports, I'm all ahead on the Marcus Freeman train. Love what that dude was as a defensive coordinator, and I was saying somebody give him a good job, okay? He took the job defensive coordinator at Notre Dame. Brian Kelly decided to lick a gift horse in the mouth and took a job at LSU, and then Jack Swarbrick did the thing I did not think he would do. He elevated the one guy he could elevate to get me on board with Notre Dame. All right. I haven't been on board with Notre Dame since 2004. I was a junior in high school the last time I was rolling deep with Notre Dame because it's just not a part of my constitution. It's normally not how I want to get down. But when you got guys like Carlisle Holiday and Arnaz Battle and Ty Willingham rocking Notre Dame, yeah, you got me too. I'm on that team, all right? And now you've done something I think that could be even cooler with Marcus Freeman because it's not just Marcus Freeman, as you well know. It's also Tommy Rees. So you got the two up-and-coming dudes working together to keep Notre Dame where they have been, which is basically being in the college football playoff every other year, even if they get destroyed in the college football playoff. You figure it out with Tyler Buckner. You figure it out with Drew Pine. You'll be okay. But those dudes also wanted to keep Tommy Rees around. You've added some outstanding players and coaches to the staff. Marcus Freeman got baptized by fire against Oklahoma State in the Fiesta Bowl. Was in that game, by the way. Had a chance to win it. Okay. Now, the other reason I'm really on board with this train is because Marcus Freeman and Jack Swarbrick did something I did not think that they would do ever at Notre Dame. It's not just that they scheduled an FCS opponent. It's that they scheduled an HBCU. And to sweeten it just a little bit further, scheduled another Ohio State alumnus to play. You'll know Notre Dame will play Tennessee State in 2023. Now, I thought it was interesting that there were a number of notable and not so notable Notre Dame fans who were beside themselves angry with this. So you've heard me refer to associate producer Tyler Wojak. He is Notre Dame alumnus and huge Notre Dame fan. So I would ask him straight up, yo, what am I missing about this? And there's a couple things, right? The first one is that Notre Dame and USC had been the only teams not to play an FCS opponent in the history of the sport. Now, because Notre Dame has scheduled Tennessee State, it's just USC. That's number one. We'll get to that here in a second. Number two is you're bringing down your schedule competition. Now, this is the part that I didn't give a lot of thought to until Tyler brought it up. Since being in this open marriage with the ACC, because I refuse to call Notre Dame a conference member of ACC because they still play an independent schedule, they are getting what they think are inferior games at Notre Dame. They got lucky with Cincinnati last year in that Cincinnati was very, very, very good. And then they took an L, right, at Notre Dame Stadium. It happens. But for the most part, it's also looking around and going, what else do we have here? Okay? So Notre Dame is going to do the peak Notre Dame thing in 2023 and go play a football game in Dublin, Ireland. Okay, fine. The next week they'll be back, and that was going to be a bye week until Marcus Freeman told Jack Swarbrick, I don't want a bye week when we come back. I want to play somebody somewhere. And this is where I kind of want to give Jack Swarbrick credit, but not too much credit, because scheduling is a team effort, number one. And number two, you got to be looking at me when you schedule Tennessee State. But Jack Swarbrick was once on the Indianapolis Sports Commission back in the 80s, back when they used to play a game called the City Circle Classic. Tennessee State used to play in that game. And he remembers fondly what that game represented outside of the caliber of football being played. The quote that he gave was, the alumni coming to our city, the bands, the game, it's always been a goal to try and bring some of that here if we could figure out a way to do it. Now, that is the part where I'm going to kind of dunk on him just a little bit. You could have always brought an HBCU to Notre Dame. Nothing to stop you. You could have scheduled Jackson State in the 60s when they had Walter Payton, or 70s when they had Walter Payton, in the 60s when they were destroying people. You could have scheduled, Willie Gordon in Jackson State when they were destroying people. You could have scheduled Florida A&M when they were destroying people. You didn't want the smoke, or you didn't think the juice is worth the squeeze. One or the other. Maybe some version of both, because I dare say if Notre Dame had scheduled Jackson State, there would have been a fight for the rights to that game. Because Jackson State is about its business right now, and they have one of the most visible head coaches in the sport. So much so that we would have already known Jackson State was going to be going up to Notre Dame to get a W, okay? Whereas Jerome Bettis got to ask Eddie George straight up, do you think you can win this game? He's like, I absolutely think we can. I love me some Eddie George. He's very cool, man. He was on this show, and I believe that he's going to turn Tennessee State into a winner along with Dr. Mickey Allen. But you the only person at Tennessee State right now, I should say, outside of Tennessee State, there ain't nobody else to think y'all going to win that game. If you go win it, I'll be the first person here to say you was right and I was wrong, but keep it 100. Y'all get paid a lot of money to go play that game. And you're hoping you're going to catch the jet lag Notre Dame. And that's what people would say, right? You caught a jet lag Notre Dame, and Notre Dame would say, even so, we shouldn't lose to a Tennessee State, but fabricated futures and all of that. I also want to point out that you're going to have two black head coaches playing against each other at Notre Dame Stadium. It might have happened during the Tyrone Willingham part of the Notre Dame experience, but I don't remember it, right? It's interesting to me because outside of like Stanford, you really don't have a whole lot of black coaches at these predominantly white institutions, right? Like Stanford was just kind of real in that it went from like Denny Green to like Ty Willingham, Jim Harbaugh in there a little bit, and then to David Shaw, right? It was kind of surreal there, but Stanford also does not make any qualms about what they do. They want to be Notre Dame on the West Coast. They're about education. They had a quarterback who was a Heisman finalist and a number 1 overall pick, who studied architectural engineering, which, ordinarily I would dunk on, but seeing as Nakobe Dean studied mechanical engineering, won the Butkus Award, you can't do that anymore because the dudes has just come out this smart over the last 10 years. It's like that. I also want to point to Notre Dame has Ohio State to start the season. If Notre Dame manages to beat an Ohio State that I know is going to be looking to go hunt people, I think everybody's going to be talking about Marcus Freeman the way I'm talking about Marcus Freeman. I think everybody's going to be up for it. And I'm here for that as well because that's going to be an epic game. I love energy on the sideline. I love watching a college football coach change the tenor of what you do to further suit the kind of program he wants to be. That is what Marcus Freeman has done, and that is what Jack Swarbrick has allowed Marcus Freeman to do. Kudos all around to a team and a program that normally I'm just with you about. But now I'm with them about. Strange. When you start thinking about including other people into your thing, they choose to join you. Hi. Hey, Notre Dame. Now, we going to get it chopped and screwed up there in South Bend and see what y'all really working with. Next take I want to have here is about Oklahoma. Shocker there. But it's really about Oklahoma and the spring game experience. Okay. So the turnout is for real. And I want to, Oklahoma fans probably going to get a kick out of this, all right? So we're just going to go ahead and get it out the way. It's not just that Oklahoma packed 75,360 people to a glorified practice. It is that it is the highest attended spring game in the history of Oklahoma football by more than 20,000. It's also that it was the best attended spring game of any spring game in 2022. Georgia had about 65K, 66K following a national championship and the first one in 41 years. Oklahoma still outdrew them by doggone near 10,000 people. This is at a stadium that no longer holds 100,000 people. I think the capacity now is like 84 at the Palace on the Prairie. It's not a small thing. But you also have a lot of factors that are coming together here, right? First one is you have a genuine new head coach at Oklahoma for the first time since Bob Stoops was hired in December 1998. Bob Stoops appointed Lincoln Riley, the head coach at Oklahoma, at 33 years old. Even Lincoln Riley would cop to that. So there was no real coaching search, and there was no real, we want to go get this dude. That happened for the first time in more than 2 decades at Oklahoma, and Joe Castiglione hit a home run. As a matter of fact, when the news came out that Lincoln Riley was going to be the new head coach at USC, I sent a tweet saying Oklahoma head coach Brent Venables. Knowing doggone well probably wasn't going to come through because Brent has not wanted to go anywhere at all since joining Clemson in 2011, 2012. He chose Oklahoma, which is another way of saying Lincoln Riley left Oklahoma. And I'm fond of marriage analogies here for a number of reasons, not the least of which is I'm divorced and I'm an adult. Number 2 is I've been broken up with and I'm an adult. Number 3 is nothing spurs you into action like wanting to show your ex what they are missing. All right? You want to act as if that doesn't matter. Fine, you go do that. But you would be walking around, let's say downtown Tulsa, and you might see your ex. And if your ex looking fresh, you gonna feel some kind of way about that. But if you are the ex that is looking fresh, that is what you live for. Okay? You want that. You want that envy. You want somebody to reflect back and say, damn, I should have married that person. What was I thinking about? We all live for that because we are selfish as human beings. Okay? You got that at Oklahoma. And not only that, you got a new man who loves you, who brings you flowers, who whispers sweet nothings into your ear, who tells you, no, baby, we getting back to national championships here. And that has been the mood in Oklahoma. As a matter of fact, I've been the contrarian here in my home state, in my hometown. A lot of people are like, yo, man, RJ, I remember when you used to root for Oklahoma. It's like, I still root for Oklahoma. I'm just not an idiot. Like, I see what I see, which is to say they ain't played nobody. You hired a great coach. You brought in a good coordinator. You brought in some great players, but you still ain't played nobody. Okay? I need you to go play somebody. Because pointing to results is the reason why I'm hedging on Lincoln Riley, right? Which is saying, hey, everywhere he's been, Oklahoma, he's been able to win. But when I really want to poke USC fans who want to be like, yo, RJ, why isn't Lincoln Riley mentioned as your best head coaching hire of 2022? It's because I remember him at East Carolina with Shane Carden, offense coordinator. Ruffin McNeil gave that man a shot. Mike Leach actually getting into trouble ended up giving Lincoln Riley a shot to be an offense coordinator. Ruffin McNeil took that job at East Carolina, brought Lincoln Riley with him. And then, we got Gil Brandt saying to Bob Stoops as he's getting ready to fire Josh Heupel, hey, I have your next offensive coordinator. He's over there in Greenville at Vince McMahon's alma mater. I'm only willing to go so far on that, but I do want to say he's been remarkable as a head coach. Even in the year for which everybody wants to dunk on him, he won 10 games. Okay? I think Brent Venables can do better, but he needs to first do better. Then I will be on team. Yeah, okay, Oklahoma was doing all the things they ever said they would. But, dog, I watched the spring game, even as I was in Birmingham, Alabama, covering the United States Football League because I'm that type. And Javonte Barnes is the dude. Dylan Gabriel, he got the goods. And he has a relationship with Jeff Lebby, offensive coordinator. They know what they're doing in the system, and they're teaching it to everybody else. Theo Weiss is going to become the dude that I always thought that Theo Weiss could become. As a matter of fact, when Jaden Hazelwood, Trajan Bridges, and Marvin Mims were still over there, I was going, Theo's the dude. Like, Theo was coming out of Allen ready to go. He gets to that sort of play. You're going to see what I'm talking about. I really think Theo Weiss has it in him to be great. And then you take a look at what they lost in the NFL draft, right? Isaiah Thomas, Nick Bonito, Delary Turner-Yell, right? We keep going around there. But they had guys, and they're going to be able to replace those guys. Like Isaiah Thomas going, Jalen Redmond's going to be a guy. I'm with that, right? I've been a big fan of what Kobe McKenzie is because that dude is bigger and larger than Kenneth Murray was when he got drafted in the first round 2 years ago. Okay? You have guys. The idea that you're going to be able to stick a guy like Billy Bowman at safety and say, no, you're going to learn to play this position because that is a Brent Venables move. Remember, Brent Venables is the dude that identified Isaiah Simmons coming out of Kansas and turned him into a destroyer of worlds. I'm saying, Oklahoma expects to be good. I want Oklahoma to be good for obvious reasons, but they got to do it first. Also, adding here, Oklahoma, 75K plus. USC, 33,427. That's not a take. Those are just facts. Next take I have has to do with LSU, and it's got 3 quarterbacks who can play. Now, only one of them is going to start week 1 against Florida State. That's how that goes, right? But with Walker Howard, Miles Brennan, and now Jaden Daniels, you have 3 capable dudes in Brian Kelly's first year at LSU who could absolutely show out for you. But the way I look at this is you're probably going to pick between Miles Brennan and Jaden Daniels, and Walker's going to get the redshirt year because that's the move to set them up for 2023. 1, because you want him to get that year of understanding and learning what it means to play at this level. And 2, because you might not win the Arch Manning sweepstakes, and you need to have a contingency plan. Okay. Then it's about which one of those 2 guys, Jaden Daniels or Miles Brennan, do you better expect to take care of the football? Because that's what college football coaches like Brian Kelly care about. Take care of the football. Don't beat yourself. Don't take unnecessary risk. Hand the football to the running back. Dump the ball out of bounds. You know, all the things that I don't really like about college football, but lead themselves to conservatism because college football fans, not college football fans, college football coaches hate taking chances. They just don't like it. Like, I'm covering the USFL, and we were into week 2 before we saw a 3-point conversion attempted, let alone converted, right? We got this double pass deal that you could do in the USFL. Haven't seen one yet. I want to see more coaches that want to run an offense that say, no. We're trying to go for 6, and we're going to take chances to do it. Matter of fact, my favorite play call in USFL so far is Kevin Sumlin's Hail Mary call because it's called Bombers. Hey, Bombers. We're just bombing people. Like, I love that. Bomb people at LSU. Like, throw it deep. I'm asking for that. Please don't do the same joint you was doing at Notre Dame. I had to learn that Kevin Austin ran a 4.440 at the combine. That's who Brian Kelly is. What? No. I want to see the kind of LSU I saw in 2019 where he said, we're going to throw it all over the yard, and we're going to set records throwing it all over the yard on the way to an undefeated season in the national championship. You can do that, but will they? Okay. So on top of that, remember that Brian Kelly is the dude that started Brandon Wimbush and then went to Ian Book? He could do that again. I would not be shocked to see both Jaden Daniels and Miles Brennan start games this year before somebody figures out that the offense runs better with this guy rather than the other guy. We'll see. Next take I have. The SEC West is a monster. This is not news, but it does need to be hammered home. I watch a lot of Big Ten football for obvious reasons, okay? The Big Ten East was a monster last year. Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan State, right? Even Rutgers wasn't sorry. The SEC West sometimes feels like it compete with the NFC East. It's not true, but that's how it feels because you got to go to number 4 in a 7-team division before you get to a team that did not win 10 games. Think about that, right? Like that's... I'm having a hard time trying to understand how Alabama, Texas A&M, Ole Miss, Arkansas, and even LSU to a degree aren't caping for a college football playoff expansion. Because I would love nothing more than to see 8, 10 SEC teams in a 2014 playoff against, other teams, but also the only other SEC team that isn't in the SEC, and that would be Ohio State. Because they recruit like one and play like one. Like, it's just how it goes. But I'm looking at it, I'm going, Alabama still has Bryce Young, right? Who we'll talk about here a little bit later on the show. They got Will Anderson, who is the best edge rusher in college football. May have gone before the number 1 pick this year in the NFL draft if he was eligible. It's like that. They added Eli Ricks for a Josh Jobe didn't look like he was doing. Eli got into some trouble. We'll see what Nick Saban decides to do about that. They got to teach Quincy McKinstry how to, cover because he was getting exposed in a college football playoff. Okay? But you got Henry Toto returning. That's a leader on your defense. Okay? You've got dudes offensively returning. And you added Jermaine Burton from Georgia. Perhaps the number 1 wide receiver going into 2022 for Georgia decided he was going to transfer to Alabama after winning a national championship at Georgia. That's how good they have been at turning out wide receivers at Alabama. He said no. The best wide receiver at Alabama last year was the 3rd best wide receiver at Ohio State in 2020. The Detroit Lions traded up to go get that man. His name is Jameson Williams. I'm saying that whatever Holman Wiggins, who, by the way, used to coach at the University of Tulsa, is doing for wide receivers at Alabama, yeah, that's the move. Outside of Alabama, I don't think there's any other place other than Ohio State. Like, you got Ohio State and Alabama offer, you're winning. Either way. I would choose Ohio State, but that's also because I watched Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave get selected along with Jameson Williams. But, not too long ago, it was Jerry Jeudy, Henry Ruggs, so forth, so on. Jalen Waddle, Devontae Smith. We can keep going. There isn't a bad argument here. As a matter of fact, when I put out this question going, if you had an offer from Ohio State, why wouldn't you take it? I'm really asking the question. If you have a good answer for that, let me know. You can leave it in the comments. You can hit it on Twitter, whatever, because I think that's a really good intellectual discussion where there are no losers. A&M put together the best recruiting class in history 1 year after Alabama put together the best recruiting class in history. Jimbo Fisher is beside himself looking for reasons to tell everybody, no, we're up this year. We're coming for everybody this year. Like, because I'm a huge F1 fan, and some of y'all know this, some of y'all don't, I would equate what Jimbo Fisher did, getting his piece of paper out where he wanted to read off names like Jack Swarbrick and Sliced Bread and telling everybody, nah, we're about this. It's Toto Wolff in the roll neck, black turtleneck at the end of the last season Drive to Survive going, everybody's got a target on their back. Nobody's safe. which, I eat up because I'm a Lou Hamilton fan. Super fan, I might even add. But that's where A&M is right now. They all feel that kind of way. They feel like they have the roster to go after everybody. Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State, whomever you want to put in front of them, they want the smoke. I'm here for that. Ole Miss. You heard my man's Matt Corral say it over here. Yo, they got some dudes. Like, talking about Michael Triggs, Zach Evans. They got some dudes over there. Along with Ulysses Bentley IV, which is an all-namer, right? Transfers in from Southern Methodist where he was putting up numbers. You also got Jackson Dart back there who's going to be your signal caller, right? If Lane Kiffin is the kind of dude I think he is, and he can replace dudes like DJ Durkin and Jeff Lebby, his two coordinators, they ought to be decent again. Now, shout to Corral, who is riding for his dude Luke Altmaier, and I get that, right? But we all know who's going to be the number one, and we all know why Jackson Dart is there. That's Ole Miss. See how I haven't got to Arkansas yet? What? Sam Pittman got KJ Jefferson returned it. Okay? He added Jay Hazelwood. Okay? They still got a dominant defense where they got better. Barry Odom added Drew Sanders. Bubba Poole, Grant Morgan, Jalen Catalon. Come on, man. Like, that's a murderous division over there. And I can't wait to watch it because as a chaotic neutral in this sport called college football, I'm here for that. Give me all of that. Matter of fact, Auburn, good luck to you. Good luck to you. Like, seriously, good luck to you. Mississippi State, good luck to you. It's going to be crucial in that division. I'm so excited. All right. My next observation, takeaway. Ohio State is the only SEC team outside of the SEC. Okay. It's not that Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, Jamison Williams got drafted. It's that the best wide receiver at Ohio State was not drafted. Okay. I watched the Ohio State spring game. I watched CJ Stroud go find dudes and throw them open. And we'll have a great conversation about who is the best player on this team. But you got Stroud. You got Travion Henderson back there. You have you got JSN. You got Jack Smith and Jigba. You got Marvin Harrison Jr. You got Julian Fleming, who conveniently gets lost in all of this, who was the number one wide receiver in 2020. Emeka Egbuka, who's the number one wide receiver in 2021. Brian Hartline ought to be the highest paid wide receiver coach in the history of the sport because he's been recruiting like that. They're so crucial on the outside. You're also going to have not just Travion Henderson back there, but also Evan Pryor and Mayan Meatball Williams. You got dudes in a Ryan Day offense. And remember, Ryan Day is, I think, talked about wrongly here. And I can even go with Ryan Day is more important to Ohio State football than Lincoln Riley was to Oklahoma football. I understand that Oklahoma fans going to be some kind of way about this, but let me walk this out. Before Ryan Day was hired by Urban Meyer to be the offensive coordinator at Ohio State ran basketball on grass. Basically a triple option. We're going to turn the quarterback into a runner. We're going to take advantage of the extra man. JT Barrett, Braxton Miller, Cardale Jones. Okay. Before that, we're going to pound the rock. We're going to throw Maurice Clarett at you, right? We're going to throw Beanie Wells at you. We're going to throw Eddie George at you. We're going to have the first two-time Heisman winner in the history of sport, and he's also a tailback. That's who we're going to be. We're going to run the football and play defense. Ryan Day comes along, and not only does he say, Urban, I want to throw the football. He says the best player, or I should say who turns out to be the best player in 2019, Joe Burrow, I like the other dude better. I like Dwayne Haskins, who does not remind me anything like Alex Smith, which is what Tom Herman ended up recruiting Joe Burrow to be, right? Was to be the next Alex Smith at Ohio State. He wanted the dude that was a pure passer. And recent events have kind of colored this a little bit, but I still want to say this out loud. Dwayne Haskins is the best pure passer who ever played football at Ohio State. And I know this to be true because he is the tool for which Ryan Day showed Ohio State fans, no, it's not just that we could throw the football, it's that he doesn't even have to threaten to run on anybody because to look at Dwayne Haskins is not to see a runner. To look at Dwayne Haskins is to see a dude who purely could flip his wrist and the ball goes 70 yards and it ends up right where he wants it to be. Ryan Day parlayed that into Justin Fields. Justin Fields into a dude that was once ranked 838th in all of high school football recruiting into what might be the first selection in the 2023 NFL draft. People are getting upset about C.J. Stroud not running the ball the way they were upset about Dwayne Haskins not running the ball, and all they have to show for it is 40 a game because that offense moves. All to say, I watched the Ohio State spring game. I was not impressed with the defense. Shocker there. A, the defense plays really vanilla in the spring game because they don't want to show anything. And B, it's a new defense with a new coordinator. But you still got Jack Sawyer on an end. JT Tuimoloau on an end. Okay? Taraji Mitchell can be in the middle, along with my dude Reed Carrico. You got dudes, right? It's about getting them to be the world's okayest defense. If they are the world's okayest defense, they will make the college football playoff. Because Oklahoma did that for like 4 years in a row. You can make the playoff being terrible if you're looking at the 2018 Oklahoma defense. If you're okay, you could probably win the first national championship at Ohio State since 2014. Okay? That is why I believe that it's the only SEC team outside of the SEC. Because when you look at the way they recruit, the way they develop in the fan base, there is no conversation about that. Okay. That is the last of my spring takeaways. If you thought I missed something, let me know in the comments below in the YouTube channel or hit me up on the tweets or tweet us at #1show on the tweets or, tag us on Instagram, whatever. Okay. Now, I want to discuss my post-spring top 25. Quickly, I'm going to go from 11 to 25, and then we'll go one by one from 10 to number 1. So, you can find this whole thing on the tweets and on our social outlets. But 25, LSU. 24 is Penn State. 23 is Oregon. 22 is Kentucky. Wisconsin at 21. Minnesota at 20. USC at 19. Cincinnati 18. Houston at 17. BYU at 16. Oklahoma State at 15. Michigan's at 14. Michigan State's at 13. Clemson's at 12. Utah's at 11. Ole Miss is at 10, which is where we start. Got ahead of myself. All right. So number 10, Ole Miss. I mentioned how much I really love Ole Miss and what they were able to do in the transfer portal. The Portal King, memes and gifts that Lane Kiffin is up there with. He's doing a great job on social, telling dudes like, you should come to the SIP. When I lived in Hattiesburg, didn't nobody call it the SIP. That's how long how far they have come. Also, when I lived in Hattiesburg, didn't nobody want to go to Ole Miss. You were going to Mississippi State, you were going to Southern Miss, you were leaving the state. I'm kind of intrigued to see how that has changed since I last lived in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, which is like 1997. Okay? It's kind of interesting to me. We'll continue to see if this works. But if you know anything about life outside of football at Ole Miss, you understand where I'm coming from on that. Everybody wasn't on the program. But then again, wasn't everybody on the program at LSU until Nick Saban got there. Favorite story about how this can go. Nick Saban gets hired on at LSU to be the head coach. Mark Spears is the #1 recruit in the state of Louisiana. He lives in Baton Rouge. Nick Saban has a home visit with him and says, Marcus, I can't let you leave the state. And Mark Spears said, Coach, you ain't got to worry about me leaving the state. I'm not even leaving the city. I'm going down the street to Southern. Now, I love HBCUs, and you know this. I like Southern and the jukebox. You know this too. But the idea of someone picking Southern over LSU growing up in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, still blows my mind. Because that's what it was until Nick Saban decided to say, hey, look, I'm going to be Marcus Freeman about this approach. I'm going to open it up and tell everybody, hey, look, we want to be about you. Whatever you is, we want to be about that. If that is what Lane Kiffin is able to do at Ole Miss, I am all for it. Make it work. And you can do a lot with winning and winning with dudes that everybody else wants to be on the program with. It's one of the things that Matt Corral was able to do. He was a fiery dude, and people wanted to follow him. They enjoyed him. Kind of like Marshall Henderson, but not as obnoxious. Same difference. Okay. Number 9 on the list, Oklahoma. Yeah. Brent Venables, Dylan Gabriel, Jeff Levy. I think putting them here, you can see where I'm going with this, because I think that Oklahoma is going to be what Oklahoma has basically been since the Russell Athletic Bowl in 2014, since the Sweatpants Bowl, right? Had our get right season and been on the program ever since. I think they got the goods. I think they're going to be okay. I think the schedule sets up. Nebraska kind of gives me the willies because, well, I'm up on Nebraska, and you should be up on Nebraska. Nebraska's up against it, though, either. I mean, too. Like, you can make an argument that Scott Frost is going to leave nothing to chance this year because he can't. Because this is the year it has to come together. He went to go get Mark Whipple. O'Shawn Mathis picked them and not Texas. He got Casey Thompson. He's got Chuba Purdy. It could be cool. And I hope it's cool. But if you're Oklahoma, you got to win that football game. And it didn't look like they were going to win it until late. And Nebraska wasn't that good last year. Remember, it's the best 3-win team in all of college football. I guess how it went. Okay, number 8 on this list. Texas. Yeah, I'm going to catch hell for this. I understand, but I refuse to look at the roster of 85 scholarship players at the University of Texas and say that's not a top 10 team. That's what I'm doing here. I'm saying that I could select any one of you to be the head coach at Texas, given that roster, and you ought to win more games than you lose. I can't overstate it. It's a 5-star backfield. Start with that. Quinn Ewers, Bijan Robinson. Start with that, right? Workout. Well, they can't stop nobody. They might not need to. They might put up 50. They are going to be good. And if they are not good, I am prepared to call it one of the biggest failings in Texas football, because it would boggle my mind to see them not win at least 9 games. I think they're going to be good. I think OU Texas is going to be another epic battle. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. You're going to have an offensive head coach versus defensive head coach with real stakes, right? This is also the last couple of years, maybe the last year, for both Oklahoma and Texas to have a cakewalk of sorts to the college football playoff, because you can't be the kind of program, if you're Texas, who goes into the SEC and doesn't produce NFL draft picks. You're not going to work out there. You can do that at Oklahoma. You could do that at Texas. You can't do that in the SEC. You're going to get eaten alive. So you need to take advantage of these last couple of years in a conference that is not as deep top to bottom. Full stop. You got maybe 2 other teams to worry about in the Big 12. Okay. Number 7 on the list, Notre Dame. I like Notre Dame. I've told you why I like Notre Dame. But I'm going to leave you with this point. Tommy Rees, Marcus Freeman want to be there together. The last time I saw something like that, in where I had basically a defensive coordinator and an offensive coordinator who wanted to work together, saw a national championship, right? That's what I saw. I think you have that in this team. I think they're going to be okay. Plus, they're due. Like, Notre Dame's going to get all the jokes that we used to give to Georgia now, because outside of 1993, haven't won a national championship. And even the 93 championship is up for debate, because promptly after beating the number 1 team in the country, they lost to Boston College. And everybody remembered. So we didn't have a playoff then, right? A playoff would have helped in 93. I don't want to see that happen again, but I would like to see Notre Dame get into a college football playoff and not get destroyed. That'd be fun. I'd be here for that. Don't get destroyed by Clemson. Don't get destroyed by Alabama. You know, like the 2012 college BCS national championship game, we all went out to lunch after the first quarter because like, oh, okay, cool. I understand now. All right. Number 6, Arkansas. Love me some Arkansas. I love the Pitballs. You know, do you know that Sam Pittman is the only SEC coach to be on the number 1 ranked show? And one of the reasons that I think that is because I absolutely love that man. And he was listening to somebody when they told him I knew something about what I was talking about. Still one of my fondest memories of 2021 is just getting to jam with him. I love his get down. He recruits my kids. I should probably retire this phrase, and I will. I'm sure that I will because I've said it too much. But when I say my kids, I mean the metro area in Tulsa. I mean green country. I mean Oklahomans. One of the things that I was more or less coming after where I got my master's degree, Oklahoma, is that the University of Tulsa has had two first-round draft picks in as many years. We are a small private institution in Tulsa, Oklahoma that not a whole hell of a lot of people care about. But Zaven Collins and Tyler Smith were developed here, to steal that TM phrase from Ohio State. Oklahoma didn't do that in 2021, and you should, or 2022, excuse me, and you should. I'm saying that Brendan Presley went to high school down the street from me. He's one of the best players at Oklahoma State. Now, Oklahoma does get its amount of players like Ethan Downs, whom I really love, who's a class human being as well. But every now and again, you look around and you go, what do our kids in Tulsa have to do to get a big-time college football offer? Because Dax Hill ends up at Michigan, and he's a first-round pick. Josh Proctor is probably going to be the starting safety at Ohio State. The first Oklahoman to be recruited to Ohio State. I'm saying Sam Pittman will come to green country and recruit the kids that I know, that I grew up around. And many of y'all would cop to this, in that college football, it matters where you grew up. It matters where your parents went to school. It feels differently for you to go to school there, right? It feels differently for you to have people around here. And for Pittman to understand the number of folks that call the Hogs that live west of the Arkansas state line cannot be undersold, because Arkansas is not the place that is turning out Division I talent at the rate that, say, the state of Texas is, or even the state of Louisiana, states they border. But he goes to get them, and he does not discriminate about the kids that are around his area, because he understands. You grow up around us. You grow up in our coverage area. You grow up with people that come to school here. It means something different to you. One more thing I'll say about Arkansas in particular is Felix Jones went to Booker T. Washington High School. Graduated a year ahead of me, and I was at Booker T. when he was at Booker T. He has since turned himself into quite a philanthropist and businessman here in the state, here in the city of Tulsa. That matters to me. It matters to me that the kids that wanted to go to Arkansas, Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, the University of Tulsa want to come back here and live here and do well for the people that helped them reach these heights. Sam Pittman understands that. I wish more college football coaches did too. Number 5 on the list, Baylor. I love me some Dave Aranda. I think he's one of the cool dudes in college football. All right? So I'll go at it this way. He told Jerry Bohannon, Blake Shappen is going to be the starting quarterback when we get to training camp, so that we have that edge going in. Everybody understands, we be on the same page. We don't have this QB derby. But he told Jerry Bohannon before the transfer deadline came on May 1st. That is a class move. He didn't have to tell Jerry Bohannon the doggone thing. He let the man know and let him enter the transfer portals, where he would have an opportunity to go compete for a starting job somewhere else in August. I love that. But I don't expect anything less from Dave Aranda, who has been so very cool, more or less since I got to know him when he was defense coordinator at Wisconsin. He's also the dude for which I was listening to. So for the Fiesta Bowl, when LSU played UCF, Central Florida, there was this dude that came in as an early enrollee who got to participate in bowl practice. His name's Derek Stingley Jr. And Dave Aranda told anybody that would listen, I would have played Derek in the Fiesta Bowl if I had been allowed to. He was that good from the jump. He showed up and was immediately their best player on defense. Ed Orgeron had to promise his daddy, who played wide receiver in the NFL, I won't play him both ways as a freshman, though I want to. Now, that never came to pass for some reasons that have to do with, well, LSU's just monstrous in 2019 at receiver, the 2020 years, the 2020 year, and then he was hurt for some of the 2021 year. But I'll also add in here that Dave Aranda flipped Baylor into a power in 2 years. They sort of kind of got embarrassed in his first year. Okay? Changes up the offensive coordinator, goes to get Jeff Grimes, and uses Jerry Bohannon for most of the year to win a Big 12 championship and to win the Sugar Bowl against Ole Miss in one of the best seasons in Ole Miss history. I'm up on Baylor. They add another former TU defensive tackle in Jackson Player. I think they're going to have a couple of guys that can absolutely go over there. You know what they had in Jalen Petrie. I think Dave Aranda is going to have another one of those dudes showing up. They find out what they could do with a dude like Abram Smith and then go find another Abram Smith. Remember, Abram Smith is like Tyler Algier in that he was playing linebacker, and they said, hey, man, we need you to play some tailback sick, whatever's for the team, coach, and went for 1,600 yards. Okay? I'm up on Baylor. I'm up on the reigning Big 12 champions. Number 4 on the list, Texas A&M. Again, I can't look at that roster and expect them to be any worse than this. Add to this, they beat Alabama with a backup quarterback. They are one of 2 teams to beat Alabama in 2021. The other one won the friggin' national championship. Okay? All the jokes you want to make about A&M, and Lord knows that I have made them and I will continue to make them. But if you're sleeping on them, you're just not paying attention and your biases are getting in the way. Number 3 on the list is the reigning national champion, Georgia. Some of this has to do with, I need to see y'all do it again, you know. Another part of this has to do with, they just broke the record for most draft picks in a single draft with 15. And basically, they had the linebacking crew, and I think their best player on defense in Jordan Davis gets selected. But on top of that, Jalen Carter returns, and there are a lot of people that believe that he's more talented than Jordan Davis. Give that some thought. Being more talented than a 6'6", 340-pound man who ran a sub-4.840. That's scary. Okay? That's scary. And then I'll say, the worst part of the Georgia football team, full stop, was the secondary. Those dudes were young last year. They're not young anymore. And we know Kirby Smart, a former Georgia safety, is going to shore that up. Okay? Went to get Darion Kendrick, turned him into a dude. Keely Ringo had the game-sealing pick. I've been high on Keely Ringo since he was 16 years old. Love that dude coming out of Saguaro. I didn't know that he could play corner. I thought he was going to be playing some safety because I didn't think his hips would be able to go that way. They're doing that. They got Christopher Peacemaker Smith. For those of y'all that know the Peacemaker reference, I salute you. Thank you for that. I think I'm trying to make up for this whole thing I did with the USFL Spotlight podcast where I didn't know who Michael Scott was. So I'm trying to flex a little bit more pop culture knowledge there. Other part is they don't have a quarterback controversy anymore. They had one for basically 2 years. Everybody's looking at JT Daniels going, is that the starter? And Kirby Smart's going, no, it's not. Stetson Bennett's the starter. And Stetson went out there and won them a national championship. He is a folk hero now. So much so that JT Daniels went back into the portal and came out at West Virginia. Brock Vandegrift, Carson Beck, I hope y'all can figure it out. Gunnar Stockton, I hope you can figure it out too. But that's Stetson Bennett's team next year. And I think they're going to be just fine with those tailbacks and the wide receivers that they added. Number 2, Ohio State. Okay, again, it's about having the world's okayest defense. I was equating last year the offensive passing attack to something like, aerial combat, because they were looking like the kind of program that was going to have 3 receivers that go for like 1,000 yards, 1,000-yard tailback, and 4,000-yard passer, something stupid like that. Michigan game happened, dims the brakes, come back in the Rose Bowl, and Jackson Smith and Jigba gets introduced to the nation in a way that some have never been introduced. It's not just that people knew he was good, because I think even casuals understood that Jackson Smith and Jigba was good, but they didn't know he was that good, because without Chris Olave or Garrett Wilson, he became the one. And in becoming the one, 300-plus yards receiving in the Rose Bowl against a Utah team that won the Pac-12 championship. Okay? I expect them to be in the college football playoff. I expect them to win the Big Ten championship, all of those things. Number 1, Bama. All right. So, I'll put it this way. My favorite athlete walking right now drives a race car. His name's Lewis Hamilton. He's won 7 Drivers' World Championships, 8 constructor titles. Okay. In his age, and really period, he's been the best at what he does. Tom Brady has won 7 Super Bowls. In his age, And period. He's been the best at what he does. Cristiano Ronaldo has run 7 league titles. In his age, along with Lionel Messi, depending on how you want to shake this out, best at what he does. Nick Saban is far and away the best at what he does, and he has also won 7 college football national championships. Since 2009, we're not debating who the GOAT is in our sport. And I don't mean presently. I mean for all 150 plus years of college football. Throw whoever you want out there. You know, throw the Newt Rockney dude who was lying about what Notre Dame football was at a time when you could still do that. Throw out Bear Bryant, who gets credit for integrating an Alabama football team that really didn't happen that way, right? Throw out Earl Bruce if you're Ohio State. Throw out whomever you want. Nick Saban is that dude. The parts around him change. The program does not. Come on. How are we not starting every single conversation with Alabama #1 until they lose? And even when they lose, you know how I feel about this. They're still going to get the benefit of the doubt because that's Nick Saban, not because it's Alabama. And I say it's Nick Saban, not Alabama, because I remember when Alabama was trash. I remember when Oklahoma played Alabama, and it was embarrassing for them. Now, Oklahoma plays Alabama, we're the people that are being embarrassed. Come on, man. 2018, Orange Bowl, my man Kyler Murray played his behind off. Quentin Williams was in his lap. Destroying the best offensive line in football. Goodness me. I'm so excited about 2022 college football, as you can very well tell. But you are excited too, because on the tweets, we've been having a good time. So now, I want to bring in Producer Kat as we get back to our favorite segment, or I should say one of our favorite segments on the show, We Outchea.
Hi, RJ. Very excited to do one of these segments with you. I feel like we haven't done a We Outchea in a long time. But I wanted to start out, and I'll read what you tweeted first, and then I will get into the responses. So after the NFL draft was over, you tweeted this. You said, Texas failed to have a single player selected in the 2022 NFL draft, which is, as we know, just a fact. People had a lot to say online and a lot of responses to your tweet. I'll start with the snarkiest one, which is from Wendy, who said, but, they're back.
It's the best joke in college football because everybody knows it, right? And Sam Ehlinger did not do Texas any favors when they won the Rose Bowl, right? Against Georgia, I might add. Or Sugar Bowl, not Rose Bowl, Sugar Bowl against Georgia. And said, we're back. And even Tom Herman is kind of cringing on the sidelines, which I think is the part that everybody should take away from this. But, again, I'm going to double down on this, or triple down or quadruple down. Texas is back, but will it be back to what it was in 2005, 2009? That is the question. But I do appreciate Wendy having a very good joke there.
Yeah, shout out to Wendy. You're going to like this next response. It's from Just a Dude. That's his name, Just a Dude. He says, gotta get it out the system now because next year you're going to see a lot of Longhorns go. So he is agreeing with you. Yeah, again, we felt this way after the 2014 time when, didn't have anybody selected. And then they looked good for a couple of years in there, winning 10 games, taking 14 games to win it, but that ended the way that it ends. It's not just about being back, it's about staying there. And the staying power is something they're going to really, really try to emphasize, I think, when they eventually move to the Southeastern Conference. But yes, I can't believe this. I'm siding with so many Texas fans, and I'm conflicted about it. Yeah, what's going on?
God.
What's going on? Okay, you're going to love this one. This is from Kevin. We all know how much you love that Texas and Oklahoma are going to the SEC. So Kevin says, meanwhile, new Big 12 member Cincinnati had 9.
Dog, it's not just they had 9. Right? Like, I didn't bring this out because they didn't make my top 10 or I didn't think it was that big of a take, but they had 8 outside the top 1,000. Like, what? And the dude that they did have that everybody wanted to know was Jerome Ford, who transferred from Alabama to Cincinnati. Wild. Right? Now, a lot of this is whatever the NFL draft experts, or the people, I should not even say experts, the people making the decisions have to do, because Desmond Ridder to Atlanta, none of us had mocked. Right? We all had Malik Willis.
ended up at Atlanta, and I thought Desmond Ridder would have fit better at Tennessee. Everybody was flipped on that one. But yes, like, Cincinnati's there. BYU is a monster nobody wants to talk about. Central Florida, I think, is going to get up there quick, fast, in a hurry with what Gus Malzahn is doing. Like, the Big 12 could become the new American quick, fast, and in a hurry. So I'm with you on that. But I'm also looking at Cincinnati going, how long before Luke Ficklejock starts saying developed here, not there? We'll see where that goes.
Yeah. All right, moving on to another question that you put out. And you talked a lot about Oklahoma and USC and how there's a breakup that happened and being an ex and wanting to show off and show your ex that you're still doing well. So you tweeted this: if Oklahoma got to play USC in the next 5 years, would there be more heat in that game than there is in the Ohio State-Michigan rivalry? So I pulled the best responses for you from this one. This is from our friend Jeff Schwartz, friend of the show, who said, no, USC fans don't care about Oklahoma.
He's not wrong, right? But I think being a chaotic neutral, if you are such, I'm not in this instance, as you well know, but if you are chaotic neutral, that is to say, when you look at the D&D chart, you go your own way, you do what you think is best for you, and you're going to root for the thing that is best for you, while also not trying to impact what other people are doing. You're just doing what you want to do. You might even call that being a libertarian, which is, I think, the best example of that, even as libertarians have a hard time telling me what that means. All to say, USC fans think about USC, right? And I think that is also the reason why they always kind of feel like they're over there being nebulous, is we only focus on you when you win, but you only focus on you when you win, and that makes it hard for us to take you seriously. So Jeff, who's from the LA area, who went to Oregon, who does a Pac-12 radio show, understands and get this, and I appreciate him pithily letting us all know.
Well, our other friend Steven here has a hot take in the other direction. He said, USC barely has any fans. Putting those two programs in the same sentence is so silly. Oklahoma's been a powerhouse, and USC's been a dumpster fire.
Okay, so I understand what he means there, because I'm also making that comparison, but I think the way to look at this is in the late night dynamic. So, Desus and Mero is a late night show. Okay? Late Night with Stephen Colbert is a late night show. One of these is a legacy enterprise, a traditional power that hasn't been up to snuff just because of the way that the internet has proliferated content. The other came out of not just how many people were listening to Bodega Boys. Shout out to The Brand is Strong. You know the vibes. It's also who's listening, right? So I go back to USC and who's listening by saying, look at the alumni base. Look at what they want. Look at how money doesn't actually come up for them. At Oklahoma, money is still a factor. Joe Castiglione does not want to set any sort of a market. He's always said that. Oklahoma still lives at a relatively low cost of living compared to the Los Angeles. All these things matter. And I'm saying it's a matter of perspective there. But the reason I wanted to put this out is because the heat that would generate, I think, from people like me, people that work in media, would be enormous. Because we would play up these pro wrestling tropes, right? Lincoln Riley, Oklahoma. Brent Venables, Oklahoma. Clemson, Oklahoma. Like, you have lots of different ways to go here. So when I'm thinking about it, I'm not really thinking about it from the standpoint of what those fans think. I'm thinking about what the rest of us think, because I don't know of anybody that doesn't root for those two teams that would not watch that football game because they know the storylines in the way that so many people, again, F1 counter, know the Drive to Survive storylines. You're reeled in by the human aspect of this, not by the football being played.
Well, then I'm very curious to see what you have to say about this last one on that topic. It's from Crypto Gambler. USC would likely win all 5 by a few touchdowns each time. It would be billed as a big Lincoln Riley rivalry game, but it wouldn't hold up. USC is going to be real good. Lincoln is a great coach, but SoCal recruits itself compared to Oklahoma, which is gross.
Okay. I don't even need to take on the USC Oklahoma part of this. I could just start with crypto gambler. So, crypto is not real. You're bargaining something that you're taking from the earth to try to sell to somebody else by telling them that, it's currency. It's not. We can have a discussion about why that is. But suffice it to say, if I had in real estate what you have in crypto, I'm coming out ahead. You're also got it. What is that? Clayton Kershaw, Dodgers fan? Only Dodgers fans I know from LA are, for real LA Dodger fans, so I'll give you that part. I also think that this fiction, this loud dystopian fiction that you're writing, kind of is beside the point, right? Like, the outcome doesn't much matter. That's why I framed it, which would have more heat. Because I'm not even saying they play football. I'm saying, what would we think? Can you imagine the buildup of, say, an undefeated Pac-12 champion USC, an undefeated Big 12 champion Oklahoma, who are the 2-3 matchup in the college football playoff? That would be amazing. Everybody's eating on that day. And they're all eating on that day because the trash that we would discuss, the soap opera narratives of the whole thing. Caleb Williams versus his old team. Lincoln Riley versus his old team. Oklahoma being Oklahoma. By the way, there's no reason to shade Oklahoma, right? I live here. I know what it is, right? But I'm also really, really intensely riding for my dudes. And I'm not going out of my way to disparage anybody else's. You don't need to do that. You can just tell me why SoCal kids are good. While you're telling me they're good, DJ Uyunglele left and went to the East Coast. CJ Stroud left and went to Columbus. Bryce Young left and went to Alabama. And that's just the three quarterbacks off the top of my head. So if you're going to open yourself up to that, understand a lot of people got a lot of receipts in SoCal. Kayvon Thibodeau's from SoCal. He ended up at Oregon. I can be here all day because it's like that. Producer Cat, what else you got?
This is our last one, so I have one more tweet and responses that I'm going to touch on. We just came off doing a lot of draft interviews with people that ended up going mostly, I think, in the first and second round, and then a couple went in the third. And you posed a really funny question that I think is just so silly, but we also need to hear some responses. So you tweeted, who will be the first player selected in the 2023 NFL draft? Which is just such a silly question because we didn't even know that the first pick was going to be the first pick until a few days before this year's draft. So, but it's a fun game, right? So I'm going to read this one from Big Ray. He said, Stroud is the clear number one pick. Young's size will probably drop him a few spots.
No, he's not. And I love CJ. I love CJ's story. I love Bryce, and I love Bryce's story. But the idea of Bryce being too small is the one they try to give us about Kyler Murray. And now that people have been called in on the receipt of saying that Kyler Murray was too small, it's like, no, he was thick. Come on, man. Which is it? If you want to tell me that one dude is 5'10", the other one's 6'1", fine, I'll let that go. But Bryce Young is taller than Kyler Murray. And he just won the Heisman as a redshirt freshman on a team that competed for a national championship. Okay? There's no reason to shade here. I guess the other part about this is, to Kat's point, you didn't even know Trayvon Walker's name if you didn't root for Georgia until we got to the SEC championship game. And even then, none of you picked him to be the first overall pick in the 2022 NFL draft. What I'm saying here is you're better off taking somebody who's not currently on the betting board to beat. Like, take the field. And you have a better chance of being correct here. Even as everybody believes that Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, or Will Anderson, for that matter, are going to be dudes in the NFL and probably be among those first 5 picks.
John, I'm switching up the order here, so don't panic. But there's a response from LRB who agrees with you, who said probably someone not even on the radar right now as a number one pick.
I mean, it's a great point, and it's one that probably should be raised more often than it is, because if we're still debating about who the first pick is, that means nobody knows. And it is also to say that nobody's really cleared out the rest of the room. And that's not uncommon, right? Remember, when Kyler was the first pick in the 2019 NFL draft, 3 months before, there was a lot of competition and conversation about whether or not he's going to go play baseball. Like, think about that for a second. The number 1 pick in the NFL draft was still contemplating playing baseball. We don't know because they don't say. And the NFL, I've been a victim of this myself, wants to tell you exactly what they don't think so that the competitors think that they're doing something else once it gets out to the media, right? We were all debating about whether or not Trey Lance would be a 49er. Give that some thought, right? Or even Jerry Jones going, we were expecting to get a corner. We didn't expect Micah Parsons to still be there, but we're not going to look a gift horse in the mouth, and we might have the best linebacker in Dallas Cowboys history because somebody else just decided, nah, that's all right. We'll go get Pat Surtain, which is not a bad move. Like, that's the thing. You can't really tell me which one is going to do what. You can only tell me that all those dudes are going to get drafted, and then I will believe you.
Last one here, and I think we both agree. It really depends on what does a team's need, right? So there's a lot of really great players that are available, but some might need a quarterback, some might need someone on defense. And also talking about, how Kyler was too small, people have too small hands. There's always something, right? But this person, Nicholas Goldfarb, said, if the team needs a QB, Falcons, Giants, etc., Bryce Young. If they have a QB, then Will Anderson.
Sorry, man, you're wrong. You're wrong because the Falcons have needed a quarterback for 2 straight years, and they didn't take one in the first round. You're wrong because Drake London came off the board before Malik Willis, Sam Howell, or, my goodness, man, or even Matt Corral. Like, you're wrong because they'd rather go get Kyle Pitts than Justin Fields. Now, I don't pretend to know the machinations of a general manager and their scouting department, but I feel like this gets overcomplicated in that we know what we think you need, but we don't agree on what the need is. So we're all projecting the need based on what we saw last year. We're not in the room. So the idea that you have Drake London and Kyle Pitts is cool, but only if you have somebody that can throw it in the ball. And now you're telling me that Marcus Mariota and or Desmond Ridder is that guy. Fine, maybe. I doubt it, though, because one would have gone and been that dude, Marcus Mariota, and the other one, I would tell you just my general understanding and principle here, Justin Fields is a better quarterback than Desmond Ridder, and you passed on him. So in as far as fit, in as far as what we do, in as far as who goes and drafts whom, like Daniel Jones was a top 10 pick to the New York Giants, and Giants fans are like, where did this dude went to Duke? Since when are we drafting dudes that are fake Ivies? That's where we're at right now, right? You don't know. I don't know. We think we know. And then they go do this, and we all look like we don't know what we're talking about when really, check the receipts of a few years. We'll all know together. Okay? That's where I come down on this. Anybody remember E.J. Manuel? Because I do. Producer Cat. We good?
No, that's all of them. I think it's just a fun thing to debate because people like to have opinions. And I also feel like there are times when I'm like, hey, RJ, I need you to make a list of this thing. And you're like, Kat, no, that it's not going to be relevant in 2 weeks. And I'm like, yes, I need you to rank these things. And it's like, well, because people love to look at a number, see where their team or their player is on that number and have an opinion about it. And it's just so funny because sometimes it's not relevant and people still care. It's like trying to pick the 4 teams that are selected to the college football playoff week 1 of the season. I'm still going to ask you to do that, but it's going to be really, really hard. You know, it's just what people care about.
This is the #1 ranked show, and people are in their feelings about the title of this show. So I understand it, and I'm kind of playing at it as well. But I'm also trying to sometimes give you something that you can use. And Producer Cat and I have this really cool dynamic where we're going, okay, cool. Working, but also, hey, who's the #1 team in college football? Yes, we're always doing that. That is producer Catherine Donnelly. She runs the show here. My thanks to our director, John Marcus, associate producer, Tyler Wojak, lead of screening, Rachel Cohn, and our social media maven, that is Javion Duncan. I'm the host, RJ Young. Thank you for being here. We will see you guys next Tuesday when we have our USFL Spotlight, and then next Thursday when we have our college football podcast. You're getting 2 podcasts a week from the #1 ranked show all the way through the first week of July, and I'm having a great time. That is it for me. Doses.